Disclaimer. We are two regular guys who love to talk Bone Thugs and Harmony. We do not represent Bone Thugs or any Bone affiliate. We are also not Bone Thugs experts. The views and information you hear in this podcast may be based on personal opinion. Please feel free to leave corrections and clarifying information in the comments. And enjoy. What's up, y'all? Cecil West, Beyond the Harmony, beyondtheharmony.com, back again with the one and only
John Lippy.
And this is your Thug Thursday. Back at it again. It's been a crazy couple of weeks getting into season 2. We've had some great interviews. Cairo Wolf, Sin, getting ready to drop more episodes from the Sin interview. And then, of course, we did Soulja Boy Live, which was a great success. I want to thank everybody that tuned in and called for Soulja Boy Live. Worldwide calls, Jonathan. World fucking wide Beyond the Harmony.
Yeah, man, that was so much fun. I don't think anybody wanted. If the YouTube stream didn't kill us, we probably would still be going. We probably still be live streaming right now.
Yeah, crazy technical difficulties. It's so wild the difference between doing the show live and not. I felt like a complete jackass because I was muting myself. I had a terrible flu. I still do, actually. I'm just now kind of getting over it. And I was muting myself in one place, but I was forgetting that I'm not used to having to mute myself on YouTube as well. So I actually have to mute myself in two places. And every time I'd mute myself over the bridge, you can actually hear in the recording, because what you guys hear is what I'm hearing, like on my computer. That's what everybody hears. So every time I mute myself, everybody hears that. Well, it's so funny because you'd hear me mute myself, cough to death, and then and then unmute myself. So I learned some lessons during Soulja Boy. Like, I have two fucking mute places.
I was wondering. People kept mentioning that Cecil was coughing, and I'm like, what? How did they know he's sick? Because I couldn't hear. So you guys heard Cecil coughing. I didn't hear any of it, and I don't think Ty heard any of it either. Because I have the volume turned down, and I kept seeing it in the comments, like, what are they talking about? And I was thinking maybe something was delayed, or maybe just your voice, but then come to find out, ton of coughing. So, but luckily it was just coughs. luckily you weren't saying some other stuff, like.
Oh man,
so.
No, I didn't know, but hey, you learn a lot. You learn a lot on the live, and that aside, and some of the technical difficulties, it was a great success. It was our first live call-in interview. I thought Soulja Boy was great. I thought the fans were great. I thought there might be, you never know how things are gonna go. You're fucking live. But you guys were great. The questions were awesome. And because of it, because it was successful, we have some being lined up for the future as well. So that's good that it went so good, and that other people want to do them. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. Maybe some returning alumni, maybe a couple of brand new ones. Who knows what the future holds? But it was a cool Thug Tuesday.
Yeah, and speaking of that, after the Thug Tuesday, I dropped a couple videos this week. They'll be old by the time this airs. Did you get a chance to see any of them?
I watched one of the Busy Bone ones did really good. The one about the Paradise track. I watched that one. I watched the Pastor Tone one. I thought that video was good. And I also watched the Busy by Choice Bone by Blood. I watched a little of it. It was really long, so I'm not gonna lie, I didn't watch the whole thing. I'm like, I might as well read the fucking book if I'm gonna watch this 20 minutes. But yeah, I saw that, and then I saw right before we went live that you dropped something about our store. You guys can check the store out at the store.beyondtheharmony.com, and you can get there, store.beyondtheharmony.com. And yeah, you know,
Yeah, I'm rocking my my Beyond the Harmony shirt right now. I got I'm in gear. I'm in uniform.
well, well, that is good. I was told on Instagram that it's beyond Bone Thugs and copyright infringement.
Really?
Just like today, yeah, by a random fan told me it was copyright infringement. I want to just assure you guys that it is not. I'll also say that me and John do not profit. I'll just say this again. John and I do not profit a single dime from this show. Any money that's made through advertising, merchandise, anything like that, we completely put back into our show, either growing the show or literally buying stuff to give away. There's so no profits whatsoever are made by John and I. We put it all back into this show, and this show is 100% to promote the legacy of Bone Thugs and Harmony. So I hope that makes everybody feel better.
Yeah, we're probably down $900
Oh
on the
yeah,
show.
easy to make the show happen. Yeah, easily. We dumped a lot of personal money into doing things like getting the Aaron Purnell intro, and just little things, which hey, I'm more than happy to do. But just so everybody knows, um, first of all, there legally, you can look up that there's no infringement here. I know that that's for anybody that doesn't really know the copyright. You may not believe that, but feel free to look that piece up. And in addition to that,
the legal precedent, I think, is the North Face versus the South Butt. The North, I think it's called North Face. Was there a clothing company called North Face? I think there still is. And then there was a parody company, and they made they made the clothes look almost exactly the same, but the logo said the South Butt. And
well,
North Face took them to court, and the South Butt won.
regardless, like I said, we don't profit a dime. We put it all back into the show, and this show is solely to promote Bone Thugs and their incredible 25 year legacy. So I hope that all the fans know that John and I, Ty Wise, anybody else associated with the show isn't making anything. And that's because we want to make sure the show does well. So if anything's ever made, we put it into that. So if you guys do get anything from our store, you can absolutely know that we dump that back into this show for you guys to make things happen, to continue just growing the show and bringing you interviews like the one we're going to do tonight. Tonight, we got Diego Hodge in the house. If you don't know that name, you may know this name, Diego Blak. You can find him inside the Faces of Death booklet. He is credited as management at that time. So I think that, you guys know John and I love the Faces of Death stories. So talking to the management. And this is the guy, don't forget, John, that is credited in the Machetes Dipped in Rum article as the guy that, if you remember, everybody says, Bone went to California looking for Eazy-e, which is true, but they didn't get connected up with Eazy-e until back in Cleveland at that show. And that's when they were actually in the room. They rapped for him over the phone. Everything was good. But the first time they got that person-to-person interaction was at a show in Cleveland, and he is credited as the guy that made that happen. So that's huge.
Yes. So and he's actually like the bridge, I think, from Bone Enterprise to Bone Thugs and Harmony. That bridge between Stony Brook to Ruthless.
Yeah.
So it's another piece of the puzzle. And it seemed that many people are not aware of the story. So that's the great part about this interview tonight is we're going to be bringing a brand new piece to the story that only the hardest of core Bone Enterprise fans have found, like the guy that wrote Machetes Dipped in Rum. That is, I mentioned it at the end of the Busy Bone overview of his book. At the end, I talk about Machetes Dipped in Rum very briefly, but anybody that has not read that article, it is super long. It's longer than the Busy Bone book. When I printed it out, it was almost like, I think it was 250 pages or maybe 300. So it's much longer than Busy's book. It took me longer to read it, but there's so much information in it. You're bound to learn something new that you never knew. I mean, out of all those
It's
pages, do you think? Yeah.
But here's what's interesting about it. uh, the the guy that wrote it, and I believe his name is like Matteo. I can't remember off the top of my head. I do know that he follows us on Instagram, and he's a writer out of Boston. And there's so much information in there that it's hard to, it was hard for me to digest. Like, okay, where's he getting all this? And I can say that over the course of our interviews, I think part of it was probably put together by him, just doing research and then taking educated assumptions, because parts of it I've been able to see, like with our interviews, just aren't as spot on. But so much of it, I mean, that's like a fucking, I would say less than 5%. Like the rest of it is so home run incredible and chocked full of information, that it's like the fucking encyclopedia for me. A lot of the times I will go to that article, and I will use it as a reference, to either check information or more so just find like a jumping off point, especially during like my Faces of Death research, especially even the pivotal moment of me doing this and trying to find K Chill. A lot of that came from that Machetes Dipped in Rum article, information that I used to put together a bunch of these leads. So if you guys haven't checked that out, I'm actually going to post it in the community section. I'm doing that like right now to make sure that it gets done. And I'm going to post that in the community section of the Beyond the Harmony YouTube page. Make sure you check that article out. It's incredible. I can't, man. It was done.
There was stuff I forgot about.
2015,
Like when I
bro.
Yeah, when I read it, it was like stuff I forgot about, completely forgot about things that when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, that happened. How did that escape my mind? So, and it's thorough, man. 250 plus pages. You're bound to experience something. And the neat part about this article is it did, as Cecil just said, it provided a lot for the show. At the
Yeah.
time, it was probably the longest covering of Faces of Death, other than Busy Bones' book. And so we got a lot of
It's
Faces of Death info that we were looking for, as well as
it's very
names.
it's very impressive. It's the I mean, it's the oral history of Bone Thugs and Harmony. And I always think what we do is impressive. We're helping catalog an amazing piece of the history that hasn't been. But man, to write it, and you and I have done books. John and I have made books together. John's done a lot of books on his own. John enjoys making books. I fucking hated the process of making a book. And when I look at that this Machetes Dipped in Rum, I'm like, bro, he put in work. This is not some bullshit. Like before you even read it, just take the time to skim through it and feel how long it takes you to just scroll through and skim, and just the plethora of photos that you're going to take in. If you love Bone Thugs pictures, I mean, just that alone is worth going. So I'm posting that up as we speak.
Yeah, and on the tablet, you'll never get to your hand will get tired before you cycle through the whole entire book. And also, this is another neat part about it, and this will, I guess, will be some free advertising. Through that article, I discovered Medium.com, because that's where the article was published. And Diego Hodge also is a writer on Medium.com, and I became like a member. I don't author any articles, but I get their daily updates. And I created a folder because I don't know where they get these writers. I don't know where they get the articles. They have the absolute best storylines, and you could cater your daily delivery to your interests. These articles are so good and written so well. You just wonder, how did they find all these authors to write this stuff? I don't even know if they're all Medium authors or if they just aggregate and collect the greatest articles of the day. But
Yeah.
if you're into reading, it'll deliver thoughts to your mailbox every single day. Medium.com.
I'm just gonna say too, when I was talking about the 10%, I don't want anybody to take that as a knock. When with what John and I do, you have to kind of use the clues that you gather and put some things together yourself. So it's like that's just part of what we do.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want that to sound like any kind of knock towards that guy. That guy wrote, I mean, it is the most impressive. uh, Bone should like get this guy to like help write their actual, biography. I mean, it is that good. It's just it is hard what we do, putting this together. Sometimes fans are just like, hey man, you can talk to Busy Bone or Lazy Bone on their live streams. Just fucking ask them. And it's like, I'm just gonna say it again, like it's the viewpoint of the 360, you guys. It's like a lot of these things I know what Bone's gonna say because we've heard him say it for 25 years. I want to know the other perspective. When we do this, I'm not saying that anybody that we interview that their perspective is the correct one and that Bones isn't or anything like that. It's just that I'm trying to hear every perspective. So sometimes when it's like, hey, why don't you guys just ask Bone? Well,
Right.
I'm asking somebody else. I'm using the things that I've asked multiple people to kind of put together the story because, dude, I think about things from like my life just 10 years ago that is probably a fraction as chaotic as a member of Bone Thugs, and my life is pretty chaotic, by the way. And I'm like, I don't really remember the details of that like that. So I
Right.
couldn't imagine being any of these people. You need the whole story, and I'm glad we do it like that. And I'm glad Machetes Dipped in Rum did it. So I can't co-sign that enough, that article enough.
Yeah, and there's also a Kindle. There's like a Kindle book somebody wrote. I forgot the name of it. It's a Bone Thugs and Harmony Kindle book. It's unauthorized. It's just something somebody put together. It's about 30 pages, but I read it. It's okay, but it's pretty much the stuff you know. The Machetes Dipped in Rum is the in-depth look, and like when you compare the two, you're like, wow, okay, yeah, this Machetes thing is on a whole other. That's why I looked into Medium because I thought, man, this guy is a really good author and he killed it. And then to your point about different perspectives, if you and I, some of the projects you and I worked on, if somebody asked us about our perspectives, we would have completely opposite storylines about it.
Oh
And
yeah,
that's why we interview all these different people because everybody else experiences something completely different. And also, some of the guys, sometimes when the stars of the show are always Bone, so if you're new to it, you're going to be observing it from the outside looking in, even if you're part of the crew and have a completely other perspective. Just seeing it for what, kind of like when we were talking to Sin, the way he was describing uh, the whole recording experience and all the aspects of music production. It was kind of neat hearing his side of it, that
yeah.
perspective, because he was taking a step back and just looking at it from a distance.
I'm just gonna say too, what I think is pretty cool. I just realized, still on Machetes Dipped in Rum, Diego Hodge commented on it because he is also, like you said, on Medium. So he got tagged in the article, and Diego actually commented on Machetes Dipped in Rum and said, "This is an awesome article. It has brought back a lot of memories. Sometimes we go through life and never notice the impact that we make until later. More importantly, we never realize until the impact. We never realized until later the impact that was made on us." And he said, "Thank you for the experience." So really cool that our guest tonight actually knows about that article as well. And that I think that might have been that's probably where I read about him putting in him putting Bone in the room with Easy at that concert.
Yeah, yeah, and dialing back to the Busy Bone book, I don't remember if I mentioned to you offline about how Bone was in the 1994 Northridge earthquake when they were like just got there, and I don't remember if it was right before they found Easy or right as they found him. They were in the hotel, and the earthquake happened, and actually they fell asleep watching like a gospel end of the world kind of religious show. So imagine blacking out to that and then waking up and an earthquake's happening right there in your hotel room where like the floor's coming out and Busy goes, man, is this the end of the world? And Lazy says, nah, man, it's an earthquake. We got to go. And some guy just happened to be waiting out, like just as they go out the door, one of their friends just happened to be out there with a car waiting for him, like, hey, we got to go get in the car. Let's roll. And I don't know how they got that lucky just to have that timing, especially imagine the time of day it was for that to all just come together. So they're definitely blessed with some kind of angels protecting them throughout
Yeah,
all the stuff that's gone on. They're
it
still
is.
around.
It's crazy when you hear about it, and like I enjoyed like Sin saying like how they called the shot. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah, yep. That's the law of attraction. Lazy Bone even named his album "The Law of Attraction" or a mixtape, and Busy called it Heaven's Movie. So they and there's a lot of people that just inherently understand the law of attraction or whatever you call it, the secret or the power of positive thinking or prayer. And, oh, speaking of that, Spice One, I just heard the interview. Crazy Bone was interviewing Spice One. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that. And in the interview, Spice One says that he prayed before he went to bed to become a famous rap star, and then he had a dream. And in his dream, there was a car, and somebody said, "Hey, why don't you put your head in that car? See, listen to the song that's playing." And he put his head in, and the song that was playing was what would become the song 187 Proof. Now, I was a huge Spice One fan back on his first album, and 187 Proof was one of the best written rap songs. It's him describing the story of all different wines and spirits like interacting in this like in like a fight,
Uh-huh.
and he got the lyrics to that song from a dream that he had the night he prayed to God to become a famous rap star. So like that is some super duper paranormal story that he shared with Crazy Bone, and it's amazing. And we've seen it through interviewing all these guys, and some of the things that happen in our lives. There's a phenomenon that goes on when you ask for an opportunity, and if you ask for opportunities, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, offers doors. But the trick about the doors is that you have to walk through the door. God could give you the door, but you have to have the ability to walk through it. And sometimes those doors require sacrifice. So that's my sermon for the day, delivered from
John and
Spice One
I
story.
John and I believe in the law of attraction and putting in the universe what you want. One of the things that I wanted to do was know more about Faces of Death and interview Diego Blak, aka Diego Hodge, and I think we have him with us. Let's take a look. Diego, you live with us?
Yes.
There he is.
How are you?
Hey man, thank you so much for calling in and being our guest tonight. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So I'm not sure how long you've been in here. We were just talking about just the law of attraction and putting things out in the universe that you want to see have go down in your life. That's something that a lot of our guests have talked about having that experience with Bone, and I've been reading a lot about you online, getting myself ready for this interview, and something that we were talking about before we went on the show tonight was just what a positive and motivated individual you seem to be. So we're really pumped to have you on here because that's the type of just energy that we like to give off on this show is the positivity, and you seem like a great guy. So we're pumped up to have you on here. I'm going to ask you just a couple questions to kind of get the ball rolling and
Okay.
get a little backstory, and then we're going to jump right in.
Okay.
So the I guess the first thing that I want to just set the roots for our listeners. Where's the story start? Were you born and raised in Cleveland, or where's your story start?
Yes, I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. And I started really into the music part of it. I would say my freshman year. No, I would say or probably earlier than that, probably like 7th, 8th grade.
Wow.
I started just really get into the music part of it. And my goal was to be this rapper at the time. But I didn't really take it serious until I became a freshman. So in between that, somewhere around like 8th or 9th grade, I also got really interested in like business. So my oldest sister, she went to school for business, and so she would bring her books home, and I started kind of going through the books because it had something to do with money. So I was like, business and money, I kind of equated the two, and I really started like reading all her textbooks on like business law and business management and marketing and stuff like that. So I continued doing that through high school with the music, kind of hand in hand.
Wow. So was music, like, from the school piece, was like music the first like business that you tried to get yourself into, or are there other like businesses that you tried before that, or was music like the first thing that you jumped into?
I mean, music was probably like the thing I really took serious. I mean, I always, from that point in time, I would, go to the store, buy a bunch of candy, put it in like small brown bags, and I would sell it to the kids in the neighborhood. Or I'll go to the basketball court, and I have waters and stuff like that, and selling the guys water. So that was just me making money. I never kind of looked at it as business at the time. I just looked at it, this is something to do to make money. When I got into the music part of it, the music and the business and the so-called business part didn't start at the same time. It was straight just music. I wanted to be a rapper, so I would do like the festivals and stuff that was in the area.
So before you were even helping put rappers on, you were trying to be a rapper yourself. So, and you said you were doing shows. Do you remember any any rap names that you had back then?
Man, what was it? Wait a minute. I'm thinking. One of my friends, he was like D&J, because he rapped for a minute, so it was like some real janky names. D&J, and then Blak was a name I got in high school, so that's where I kind of went with it. So I would go to shows. At the time we had like the work boots on, and then we had the work suits, the beige work suits on, and the EPMD fisherman hats and all that stuff was popular. So that was kind of my look.
So was there like a company before Stony Brook, or at what point did you kind of transition to the Stony Brook thing? And when you did that, were you still trying to rap then, or was it just business when you did the Stony Brook move? Or I guess for you, it was more like the platinum, right?
Yeah, it was so much more sort of before that. Like the whole platinum thing didn't start until I want to say like my senior year, because during high school I did like a video for the high school. I had a song called The Chosen One, and it was a guy, his name was Gerald E.Q. Robinson, and I met him, and he recorded this song for me for school, and the school had this broadcast the broadcast station where they would do like the announcements and stuff like that. So they thought it was kind of funny. He's like, hey, he want to be a rapper. Let's do a video. So they gave me a bunch of stuff to do the video with. EQ came up, with the music, and I did this song called The Chosen One that I still can't find to this day, because I'm looking for the video. So if anybody ever run across it, let me know, because I'll buy it from them because it was pretty cool for me at the time. So
yeah.
From there, when I met EQ, that was my first time going inside of a studio. So I was into the music part of it, but then I seen the mixing board, and all the lights had lit up, and I was like, that's what I want to do. So from there, I just kind of got more into like the engineering part of it. I still did a little rapping, but that was like my transition point. And then once I graduated out of high school, I went to school. It's called a recording workshop in Chillicothe, Ohio, and I got certified for music production, audio engineering. So that's why that's kind of where that story started. And then
that's awesome.
From there, people would come in the studio like, day in and day out, and we record. And one of the things that I noticed was that the guys and even the ladies that was coming in the studio recording, nothing really was happening with the music. There was like no outlet for them. They come in and record, they play it in their cars, give it to some friends or whatever, try to shop for a deal at the time. I didn't know, what shop for a deal necessarily was as far as the logistics of it, but I knew kind of the overall concept. And it was like, man, there's no outlet for these groups. So that's when I was like, you know what? Forget rapping, forget engineering. I want to go on the business side of it because there's nobody doing that at the moment. And not only doing it, but showing the other artists how they're actually a business and how to benefit from it.
So, at what point then did the transition then start with Platinum and what became Stony Burke, and maybe you can kind of explain, like, for our listeners, like, the association of that, because sometimes I guess it's kind of grouped, like all those Jam It, Stony Burke, Platinum were kind of like one thing, but it's kind of perceived that they were separate. So when did that start? When did that transition start? And were they separate entities, or what's the story there?
Yeah, they were separate entities. So Platinum Artist Management, I started in my mom's basement, and I would take artists that would come into the studio, and I would do their copyrights. I'll show them how to do copyrights, how to sign up for like ASCAP and BMI. Because I went and got all these books, the Successful Artist Management, this business of music, and I'm a reader, so I read all this stuff. I researched it, and I kind of started this library that helped me assist artists with stuff like that. So I started Platinum Artist Management. I started, doing that, and then I rented this office space that was like kind of in the neighborhood, like a storefront that somebody wasn't doing anything with. So they kind of let me use it, and I gave them a little money for it. So it was me and two other guys, Jamal and Jason, matter of fact. And, we would go around soliciting artists, talking about copyrights and stuff like that. And then we would throw these parties they call cabarets. So another friend of mine, we would rent a hall, and I think we were like maybe 18, 19. So we would rent a hall, and at the hall we would have. So what a cabaret is, if you don't know what a cabaret is, a cabaret here anyway is you rent a hall. You can't sell liquor, but you can charge people. They can bring their own liquor. So we would sell ice and cups and stuff like that. And so when we did those, we invited artists to come and perform because there was no other outlet for the artists to perform.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
Thing, and so we wouldn't charge them to come perform. They'll come perform. They can sell cassettes at the time, and then if they got merchandise, they can sell merchandise or what have you. But what we would do is we would sell them this ad on this thing called a hit list. And what the hit list was, it was a flyer, like a half-page flyer. On one side, it had the ad of whatever artist that was performing or, artist that had a project out. And on the other side, we would have like the top 20 like underground cassettes that was out at the time because people were like really into the in the underground stuff.
Right.
So I was just talking about like Spice One and stuff like that. So that's that type of stuff. So we would take these artists and we would mix them in to that list. So you'll have some popular underground stuff like 1 through 3, and then maybe number 4 would be somebody from Cleveland that wasn't popular, but the fact that they own this list, it made them seem popular. So we would take these and we would put these into stores. So one day, I think it was Jamal came to me. It's like, hey, this guy named Kermit. I was in his store dropping the flyers off, and he wanted to meet. And I was like, all right, cool. And I didn't know who Kermit was at all. And me and Kermit sat down. And he said, look, I see what you guys doing. I like y'all. I like y'all hustle. I want us to get together and do something together. So from there is where I met K Chill. I met Band-Aid Boys of Bone Enterprise.
Right.
And then we added two other groups later. And that's where I met them. And kind of that's where the Platinum Artist Management started, and then the Platinum Label Group started. So Platinum Label Group was like this distribution umbrella, right? And then under Platinum Label Group was Jam It, which was more of like an R&B type, or I'll say R&B type rap, or matter of fact, radio. Stuff that you can play on the radio. So stuff like K Chill that he was putting out was like, K Chill was his whole setup was designed to be kind of radio friendly. So then Stony Burke was, I guess, Herman's rendition of a gangster type label that was kind of underground, so the two wouldn't get mixed up. And then Platinum Label Group was kind of like the distribution arm of these different entities. And that's how that kind of got. And that's how that really kind of got started.
K Chill had mentioned that too. The just the different the different entities to split it up, and that that a lot of it was building that perception, and you were kind of just talking about that with the cards, with the top 20, and just helping build that perception. And he said a lot of it was to help build that large perception, how big the label was. A lot of people were involved, so there was always like a lot of names in the credits and multiple companies and stuff. It's funny because that perception thing just kind of never goes away in music, but it's certainly changed a lot. The way that artists try to make people perceive them today versus back then. Was that like something that you and Kermit kind of spoke about? Like, I mean, was that like an open thing? Like, hey, we got to make this look big. Let's try to put as many names on it and have as many agents, as possible. Like, something I was told was like Ralph Rock. Wasn't necessarily like a real name. It was just an extra name to put on that. Is that real?
Yeah, it was Kermit's other half. As far as name, as far as the name wise. So that was the thing. It was to make this thing as big as we possibly could, so that people would see it's just not these local guys.
Right.
So at the time, the more you got involved, like these days it's a little different because the platforms are different. Back then, distribution wasn't as readily available as it is now, because you have digital and things like that. The majors using the same platforms as the independents are using. It's just a matter of the majors may have a little bit more money than independent, but everybody's like going to YouTube or Instagram and so forth. Back then, it wasn't like that. It was, how do we make this look bigger than what it actually is, and how do we move forward with adding to it? Whether it's Ralph Rock executive producing something, because that's another name for Kermit. Or I think one of the questions that that Cecil and I was going back and forth, or at least I remember asking, was like, who is Stephanie Griffin? Like, Stephanie Griffin is my sister-in-law. She never shot any photos for anybody, but we needed a name for the photos. So I was like, well, let's add Stephanie Griffin on there. I don't even remember. I think maybe Kermit or something. Maybe, I'm not sure who shot those. Who shot those photos? It might have been. You know what? It might have been Kermit that shot those. Because we didn't want to put Ralph Rock on there because Ralph Rock was already used.
So Kermit might have shot it, but Stephanie Griffin was the name you guys used for the photographer.
Yes, because Stephanie Griffin is my sister-in-law.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's funny. My thought was, I don't necessarily have to worry about her suing me for using her name. To this day, she don't even know that her name is on it. So I think I'm gonna tell her. Send her a copy of the album. So you had mentioned distribution, and I've always wondered how independent record distribution worked. Is there anything you could share with us about how you did the distribution?
We pretty much did it ourselves.
Okay.
It was a level above selling it out the trunk.
The stores, right? Like Kermit had a lot of the stores, or you guys had like the one stop or whatever, like a lot of the record stores.
Yeah, we had the one stops, the record stores, so we would literally go and really distribute it ourselves.
Well, like how did you get the foot in the door? How did you get the stores to shelve your products? Like you just walk in, hey,
so
you guys put this ESL?
Kermit had the connections. Like Kermit had the connections, and we were a bunch of young bulls. We were just ready to do whatever it took to make something happen. Everybody was hungry. Everybody was trying to eat. So
right.
Kermit had the connection, and when he turned on the connect, we was all like, okay, what's the next step? Let's do it. But he had been in the industry. At least when I met him, he had been in the industry for like a long time.
Right. So
he had gold and platinum albums and stuff on the wall. So I mean, he had connections already.
Did you guys work well together? Like Kermit, I've seen a few interviews and just through interviewing other people, and he kind of has that big boss persona of Stony Brook. So I mean, how did you guys work together? Like and I guess like what was your title versus like his?
I don't know. I don't really know if we even necessarily had titles as much as more of. I don't think it was more titles than it was roles. And my role was to kind of make sure, like I was really into making sure like, the paperwork was tight, whether it was contracts, whether it was copyrights, whether it was setting up corporations and LLCs or stuff like that. Like that was pretty much me, and then kind of making sure the artists really have what they need, and really with the street promotions and stuff like that. Kermit he had the connections for the most part, and he financed it. So that's really kind of what what we all really needed at the time, was just somebody had the connection and was willing to put the money up, and we was hungry enough to kind of go with it. Kermit and I relationship was more of I looked at Kermit, during that time I looked at Kermit as more like a mentor, teaching me an industry, and I'm learning the business stuff. I'm learning the stuff that I read about business kind of on the side, but really teaching me about the industry, and I applied the business stuff to the industry concept of how everything rolled. We would go to different music conferences, and I remember when Puffy first got his deal, and he was at Impact with Craig Mack and Big, and talking with having that conversation, and Beyonce when she had came to Cleveland when they were Destiny's Child, and he took me up to to introduce her to her team, and I knew from just from her stage presence, I was like, man, she's gonna be hot, when she get it together. And not like I had it together, but that's just kind of what I said at the time. I didn't know she was gonna be that hot, but just learning how to recognize trends and learning how the industry actually moved about at that time. Like I got a lot from him in regards to that.
When you were doing all the paperwork and stuff, were you doing that from that storefront that you had negotiated, or was there like a Stony Brook office or a Jamit office?
No.
Or a
there was the back of the record store office. So Kermit had a record store, Dials Rapid Creations, and it was 3 storefronts. Well, really 2 storefronts, and then it was like a fashion. Fowler's Fashion was like the 3rd storefront. So right in between Dials Rapid Creations and Fowler Fashions was another door. It wasn't necessarily entrance, but it was a door that could be an entrance, but it was filled like with boxes. So we were sitting in the back of the second storefront, and the second storefront was like filled with boxes from cassettes and it was horrible working conditions. So we just kind of moved some boxes out the way. We ended up finding a desk back there, and then that's what we used.
Was there a barbershop there?
That was my office.
Was there a barbershop there?
It wasn't a barbershop.
Well,
No, it
because
wasn't a
we've seen
barbershop.
there's a popular video on YouTube. We're trying to figure out if that was Kermit's spot or not. It's an abandoned, it looks like a record store. There's tons of boxes of CDs and records and cassettes, and it's
Tons of
huge. And it
Faces of
looked like,
Death albums. Yeah,
yeah,
lots
lots
of
of
Stony
Faces of
Burke.
Death, and
It's
one
a
even
is it
says
a,
like
like a
"Vote for Kermit." It's abandoned.
it's a
What did you say?
it's a is it a what color was it? What color was the signs? Was it because he had like yellow signs on the front of the store?
It didn't show it, but you know, when we get off this, I'm gonna make sure, John, that I'm gonna send Diego the link to that that video, because there's a couple of them, and people go in there all the time, and there are, I mean, pallets of Faces of Death and Draybone and just, all the big Stony Burke names. I mean, there's pallets and pallets of them. So I'll make sure I send you that video, because it's a pretty interesting video to see all that Stony Burke. I mean, there's lots of other ones too, because it looks like the inventory from probably one of Kermit's record stores, but lots and lots of Stony Burke records in there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
and
might
one
be that
pallet even
might be
says
it.
"Hold for Kermit."
That
There's a
might be it.
pallet.
I haven't seen the video.
Yeah. I'll make sure I send you the video. As
Okay.
long as while I was bringing it up, Bone Enterprise, that's the big thing that we're here to talk about is that. So I might as well, while we're on that foot, transition into it. Earlier, you had mentioned meeting K Chill and Bone Enterprise. You even called them the Band-Aid Boys, which only certain people can remember them way back then. So it was fun to hear you reference it as that. Do you remember the first time meeting them, that experience, and what your impression was in that first meeting?
So I met them at the record store actually, and my first impression. Actually, I didn't have. Actually, I did. Crazy enough, I didn't really have a first impression that I can really remember. What I do remember is meeting them, kind of introductions. Lazy seemed like the leader or the spokesperson at the time, and everybody else, like Crazy didn't really say a whole lot. Busy, it's interesting that they're like, one thing I can say about this, they're consistent with their personalities. Like the personalities they have, like now, are the personalities that they had, at that point in time. But yeah, they didn't leave. It wasn't really a big impression, because even at the time I didn't really look at music as much as I looked at the business part of it. Where most people look at music business, I always looked at this business of music. So it was a matter for me. It was a matter of, can these guys put something out, and what do we do to really push it? Like the music wasn't a huge concern of mine. But as far as personality wise, at the time we was great.
You were going over the different members rather, and just talking about them. Something that's been talked about in previous interviews that we did with K Chill, Archie, Blaine, and I believe even Bobby Jones said this. They had all talked about originally at the very early stages there being a sixth member that they remembered going under the moniker Fishbone. Do you remember them having this sixth member that got kicked out?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
I remember the name, but I can't picture the face. I vaguely remember. And I'm thinking that may have happened probably around the time that I first met him.
So as far as the Faces of Death album, I know that you said that it wasn't as much about the music for you, and that piece of it, as far as what you thought of them and their style. When the album came out, and it came out in '93, and we know that Faces of Death on its initial release wasn't as successful as you guys had hoped. Of course, it went on to be very successful. But when it came out, that '93, did you get a chance to actually listen to it? And your I guess who you are, at least who I perceive you to be through social media, seems like, again, a very positive spiritual guy. Faces of Death is kind of a darker album. Did you get a chance to listen to it? And back then, kind of what did you think of it when it came out?
So I actually heard pieces of it as it was coming out. As they were kind of adding it to the final master. When I first heard the project, I thought that number one, it was underground. So I had listened to like Brother Lynch Hung. I don't know if y'all know who that is.
Oh yeah.
Artists like that. So it wasn't like a surprise to me to hear that type of music, because that's just that was just underground stuff. When I compared it to the other projects, so at the time it was K-Chill, it was Built to Last, Southpaw, and then there was Bone. And when I compared the four, it was like at the time it was like, okay, radio was the thing. Like we need stuff we can get on radio, which is kind of why the Flow Motion song kind of happened, because we needed like at least one kind of radio cut. But K-Chill was like the leader of this group of projects, because K-Chill will open the doors to like radio, and then we can kind of back it up with all the other acts. What I can say about Bone is that the album wasn't popular. It was something new. It was something that was super underground. To some it was demonic. To some it was satanic. It was, especially if you didn't know the guys and kind of what they were going through at the time of even recording the album was crazy. So knowing who they are made me comfortable with the music. I wasn't like uncomfortable at all with it.
So let me ask you, you had said earlier in the conversation that at one point, you kind of got interested in the studio piece of this. By the time that Bone was doing their album, were you just doing the paperwork, or did you have any kind of involvement actually in the studio at all?
No, I had no interest in it, actually. I was gung ho on helping artists understand the business that they were in.
Right.
Because that was the missing piece. It was super talented, producers. You got Bobby, Archie. Archie was a madman. Like I don't even know if he even slept. He just recorded. So you have producers like that was super talented, and I'm like, I didn't really have a. If I can't be number one at it, I'm not interested in it. And those guys was like top dogs. So I stuck to the business part. I stayed in my lane.
Yeah, it's good too. I mean, those guys went on to be very successful. Bobby Jones is still just such an amazing talent, doing a lot of things right now. So it's great that so many of these guys, all kind of got their start together and were able to keep going. We were talking about how Faces of Death wasn't that successful. It was new. It was kind of a different thing. Of course, in '93, it didn't do that good. But in '95, it got reissued, coming off of Bone being successful. We're gonna cycle to that, but just talking about Faces of Death and at that time. A rumor that I guess we've always heard as Bone fans is around that time that Ruthless served Stony Burke with a cease and desist to stop selling Faces of Death. I mean, is there truth to that? Like, why did the stoppage come of the Faces of Death copies?
So I don't know. I don't remember seeing the letter. And if the letter was. The letter did come. Kermit never showed me, because he would probably have got it before I would have received it. So I've never seen a letter.
So do you know?
The first time hearing the rumor.
Hey, that's good. Hey, that's good. We've been trying to put together why. It seemed like the Faces of Death was just like doing so well, and then kind of around that time just held up. And what's crazy about it is, You know, like I said, I have that video I can show you where there's just hundreds of copies that looked like it was just kind of money left on the wood. So many copies, in fact, that, you know, a couple people said that Faces of Death ended up being certified gold. I have a copy of Billboard that actually shows Faces of Death charting at the same time that Creeping on a Come Up and Eternal charted. Can you confirm that Faces of Death did indeed was a gold record?
It did.
Wow, that's
It absolutely did.
wow.
How
That is
did
huge.
how did Faces of Death wind up? I live in Florida, and I bought Faces of Death in Florida when Eternal was supposed to come out, but it got pushed back. And I always wondered how the distribution happened. How did this underground CD make it all the way to Florida onto it was Specs, also known as FYE later on? Do you know how? Were you still with Stony Burke when that re-release happened, and how did the distribution make it so far?
I laid the groundwork for it. Like, so when and I'm trying to work around your questions, because I can go like chronological order of kind of what led to the Bone deal and then what happened afterwards.
Yeah, you go whatever way you want. We'll bounce around you.
Okay. So Bone ended up going to California. Lady told me, he said, and Lazy and I, out of the rest of the members, him and I had the most conversations. And he told me that they were, that hey, we're going to California. At the time, they were, Kermit would give them a little money here and there, and they had to take care of their families. I think a few of them had kids. They were trying to eat, and Kermit and them didn't really get along. So the fact that they didn't really get along, and they were kind of always butting heads, when they said, hey, we're going to go to California, it just made sense to me. Also at the time when I met Kermit, he introduced me to a couple of labels, and I started doing marketing for those labels, like Rap-A-Lot, Relativity at the time. Relativity had like Ruthless, which Ruthless is one of my clients, which is kind of how I knew the eazy-e camp. The it was I don't know if it was around that same time, but the 8-Ball MJG, the Swab House, like all that stuff. I think it was kind of happening around the same time. And when he told me, they were going out there, I was like, all right, cool. I was like, how y'all getting out there? He's like, the Greyhound. And I was like, all right. And one thing I can say about out of the groups that we had, they had that like commitment and that kind of dedication to take that risk. So I'm like, well, look, whatever I can do when y'all get out there, just let me know. So they get out there. Lazy called me like, hey, we out here or whatever. And I said, well, look, if I could set you up a meeting with Ruthless in Burbank, if I could set something up, would y'all go out there? And he was like, yeah. So I ended up calling Rufus. I ended up talking to Mika and set up a meeting, and I called Lazy back, and I'm like, hey, I got a meeting set up this day. Can y'all make it? He's like, yep. I was like, well, let me know how it went. Ended up they never made it. So a friend of mine at the time had a club called the Cotton Club, and he wanted to book Easy for a show. And so I gave him all the contacts, whatever. He ended up booking Easy. So Easy's coming out, and I said, well, look, and somehow, Lazy and I got back in contact. And I said, well, look, if y'all can come out, if y'all can make it out here, I can make the introduction to Easy, and this would kind of be like y'all's second chance to do it. He's like, all right, we'll get out there. So ended up getting them back here. They come into the club. I meet them at the door. I was like, just ask me at the door. I'll take care of everything. So they asked me at the door. I took them downstairs, introduced them to Easy, and I went back upstairs. They did their thing. Easy came out and performed. They were on their way out, and I was like, how did everything go? He's like, everything good. We about to head back to California. I was like, how y'all getting there? He's like, the Greyhound. I was like, all right. So I think it's that April. I would say that was in maybe February or March was that concert. I want to say April or May. I got a call from Lazy, and he was like, "Listen to this," and he played For the Love of Money, and I was like, "Man, that shit sound hot."
Wow.
Because it was different, and it was different from an industry standpoint, but it was also different than their first project.
Right, for sure. 100%.
So he played For the Love of Money for me, and he played a little bit of something else, and he was like, "All right, I just wanted you to hear it, and we're doing it." And I didn't actually believe it until I heard Eazy's part. So once I heard Eazy's part, I was like, "Oh man, that shit great." You know, I'm thinking like, "Man, it's on now, it's on." So so that was like the last time we talked. I mean, we talked since then, but that was the last time we talked during that period. So the project, the Rufus project comes out, Bone Thugs and Harmony, and at that point in time, it's like Kermit came to me and said, "Hey, this is what we need to do." He said, "Everybody loves the first, once it started taking off, everybody was like, Kermit was like, everybody loves the first catalog, of something, when somebody's famous, they want to hear the stuff that they had out before." So he was like, "What we can do is we can sell this without having an artist, without having the overhead of an artist, and we just travel and we start pitching it." And that's what I did. Got on the plane. I was in Florida, California, like everywhere, flying all over the place.
Wow.
Pitching this Bone Enterprise project to these record stores. Now, at the time, they had this coalition called the Independent. I think it was Independent Record Stores, something. So it was like a coalition of them, like nationwide. So that was like our first targets, to talk to those independent retailers, because we had an association with them. And then from there, it got it went from there into like the FYEs and so forth. So Tower, and because because we piggyback pretty much off of the first project.
Yeah, something that I've actually talked about before is Creeping on a Come Up had come out, which was the first album, and then the 95 pressing of Faces of Death. I assume that you guys did this on purpose, but the release date for it fell when Eternal, E1999 Eternal, was supposed to drop. Eternal actually ended up getting pushed back, and Faces of Death was very successful on the day that people thought Eternal was going to come out. In fact, my co-host John is one of the people that ran to the store looking for Eternal. Eternal got pushed back, and he ended up buying a copy of Faces of Death out of confusion. Did you guys purposely pick the date? Because they landed, very, very close. They were going to land the same day, actually.
No, we didn't purposely pick a date. Yeah.
It's
The day,
amazing timing for you guys.
we didn't purposely pick a date, but the day of new releases at the time was Tuesdays.
Yeah. Yeah, it ended up doing really good. Like I said, if you, I assume you've seen it, but I'll make sure I forward you this as well. I have a couple of the billboards that show that record with all the other really huge records at that time.
Yeah, and I had gone to the store, just so you know, to buy Eternal on the date that was published in the advertisements. And when I got there, the people at the store said, "No, we don't have any Bone Thugs and Harmony, but we have a Bone Enterprise Faces of Death album." And it said the original Thugs on it. So I was like, "Oh, maybe this is it. Maybe they changed their name to shorten it. Maybe Bone Thugs and Harmony was too many characters to print in the catalogs." So that's how I wound up getting Faces of Death. Was I thought I was buying Eternal, and I was wondering why first of the month it wasn't on Faces of Death. But I also wondered.
A lot of people.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, a lot of people were. That wasn't necessarily. That wasn't like that. Just happened to be a coincidence. Honestly, that wasn't something that we kind of mapped out.
I always wondered what the initial release of Faces of Death was like for you guys. So you had, I'm assuming, a release date. You put out Faces of Death. This is the original run before they were famous. and we're just trying to understand historically from a realistic perspective, how did the release go, and what were you guys like hopes for it, and like what was that period like in '93 on that initial release?
So you're talking about when we first released it, before the whole Bone Thugs thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like super rave reviews on it. We promoted it, and people knew. That people that they come out of a record store. So the thing is that he uses the record store as leverage with the other record stores, and we we just released it, and it wasn't like people was it wasn't a Snoop Dogg release where people outside lined up at midnight or anything like that. It was just here's a release, we promoted it, people knew we kind of had this machine, and at the time we were the only ones that I can recall in Cleveland that had a machine that put out projects like that. There were rappers that had little projects, but they didn't really have like a system behind it. So, the system worked for what it was worth. I think our original pressing was, I think it was like 5,000 for each project. I don't even think we did five. I don't really think we produced or manufactured 5,000 for Bone. I want to say we did half of that because we were testing the waters because it was so different. Like it wasn't necessarily radio friendly, which is kind of what we were looking for at the time, as kind of to open the doors for us. It wasn't radio friendly. It wasn't, it was explicit. It was definitely just really straight underground. And a lot of people at the time came in the store looking for underground stuff. That's what we were pushing. But as far as, I can't think number wise like where we ended up at, but it wasn't near numbers that we would want, that we would want to have had at the time.
Between Built to Last, Southpaw, K-Chill, and Bone Enterprise, did you guys ever shoot any music videos for any of those acts, or any promo pieces, or anything video-wise?
Video-wise, I don't recall. I think the only thing that Built to Last may have did something on their own, but if we would have invested any money in anything, it would have probably been K-Chill. Because he was the most. I mean, he was the most commercial project out of the four that we had.
Did anybody have like a home video camera back then and like film the record store, or do you guys have any, archival footage that no one's ever seen of the times back then?
If anybody would have that, it would be K-Chill.
K-Chill.
Yeah.
He will be the holder of all of that information.
K-Chill, he does claim to have quite a bit of stuff. He was a great interview when you were talking about you guys as a machine. One of the things that K-Chill talked about was, Kermit would find a town that wasn't really popping. There wasn't a lot of stuff going on, and he's like, we would go there and we would do a ton of advertisement leading up to a show in about a month. And then we would do a show, and by the time we would get there, it was like we were superstars because it was a smaller place, and we did so much promotion. It's amazing when you hear these stories.
That was a game back then. I mean, that was it. It was like going into small towns. You find a small town that wasn't getting attention that bigger towns would get, with artists coming to perform, and here's this company that's bigger than life. At least it looks like it's bigger than life, coming to this this small town, and they giving us attention. They're doing a show, autograph signings, got these 8x10 black and whites, and I mean, we're making it look like everybody's superstars, and people were eating it up, and it was like small, one small town after another.
That's a great move. That's such a that's emulating what you see working in the pros and then bringing it to your level and making it a grand slam. It's an amazing move. K-Chill, he told us so much. K-Chill's kind of like why this whole show got started. I was going through the Faces of Death and looking over the names, and K-Chill was mentioned so much. I was like, who's this K-Chill guy? I got to know more, and took the time to research and find him, and it's been a crazy journey since. As I said, we interviewed him and Bobby, Archie Blaine. We actually even interviewed Jason Bibb, who drew the Grim Reaper on the front cover. One of the things that K-Chill and Bobby and Archie said was that there was a lot of recordings, and as fans, we often think that just those recordings are the only ones, but they said there a bunch of recordings got done. Some of them didn't get finished and didn't get released. Do you know of any of those recordings? Have you ever heard of that there was more Bone at that time recorded than what we've heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the time, you didn't go in the studio and record an album. You went in the studio and recorded songs, and you found the songs that made sense for an album. So you could record, for every song that's on the Bone Enterprise project, there's probably 5 other songs that could have made it.
Wow.
And it just didn't cut it at the time. And somebody's sitting there, somebody has them on like the ADAT or something. But somebody has it. But yeah, it's definitely some more recorders out there.
K-Chill, I think, is sitting on quite a bit of that, and then I believe Archie as well. Something that I had asked you about, and it goes hand in hand with the question I just asked. So John and I do a lot of research on the Faces of Death. I think the reason we do this is because it's the most mysterious part of Bone's legacy, I'd say, as fans, and it's what got us into it. So we have other fans send us things, and we received a package with a Mr. Money Loke CD in it, a original Bone Enterprise cassette, and it also had a Dre Bone album. And advertised inside of the Dre Bone album is something real big that we covered, and it's an advertisement that shows Bone Enterprise, Sons of Assassin, and it's funny because the catalog number is even like a 1999, and it's almost advertised like the intention was that it was gonna be released at that point. It's also shows under the releases Faces of Death, and I believe it also shows Mr. Money Loke, which we know got released at that time. Do you remember anything about the Sons of Assassin project? If it was going to be a follow-up album, if it was those unreleased tracks, do you remember anything about that?
It was going to be some unreleased tracks. So wow. we used other projects to promote other projects.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that happened. And we did that with Dre and I think Money Lokes too. But yeah, that was going to be another project with some like unheard of tracks. Because
wow.
if it had taken place, and I don't know if it had taken place because me and Kermit had parted ways at some point, and if it did take off, it'd be a pretty interesting project, because he would have taken some of the stuff that they had that no one has heard, and put it on that album and just put it out. And again, when you look at music and not having an artist that you have to pay royalties to, and you can just piggyback off of a name, your margins, your profit margins are huge.
Huge, yeah. Wow. That's amazing to hear that there was a follow-up project plan. That's the only place, even actually inside of the Mr. Money Loke CD, it doesn't reference this Sons of Assassin project. That Dre Bone place is the only place we've seen it, and it set the internet on fire in the Bone community as soon as we put this out. And a lot of people have been speculating just exactly what that meant. Some people thought that it might have just been a single because they had a song called Sons of Assassin. So it's crazy to hear that it was actually a planned follow-up project. I know we've been kind of skipping all around, but I wanted to make sure I did ask some follow-ups about what you said about their time meeting Eazy and going out to LA. When they went out to LA and you know, you guys, they called you and they ended up with a deal. At any point were they actually under like a contract with Kermit, or was it kind of more of a handshake situation? I mean, how did that transition from Stony Burke to Ruthless go so, I guess, easy for them?
It was, I don't even know what to call it. So yeah, they did have a contract with Kermit. So they did have a contract with Kermit. And they had a contract with Ruthless. And my opinion, after sitting back and looking at it, was that, and this part of me not knowing that there was a letter involved, and it could be the truth, it could be a lie, I'm not sure if Ruthless actually sent the letter. But my opinion was Kermit wasn't going to go after Bone for contract breach, because he will probably make more off of pushing the catalog project than he would have made actually off of a contract breach. Especially at the time when you look at the legalities that have to do with a contract breach and the financial investments you have to put in to even enforce it. And I don't think Bone at the time really cared. I don't say care. I don't think that was a priority for them to even do a cease and desist or even make a big thing about it, because it would expose a contract breach.
Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate. Uploading new videos every Thursday, so join us. Beyond the harmony for the fans, we celebrate.